Hello and welcome back to God-Free Bible Study. This is your boy, Adam of Nola, and this is, of course, my channel, Skepticus. And today we're diving into Numbers again, starting at chapter 15. Now, I'm going to give you guys a timestamp down below if you want to skip forward. I do want to give a little bit of a preamble here. You may notice if you watch the regular content on my channel that a lot of the content on God-Free Bible Study probably feels a little more primitive in terms of style and production quality and audio quality. That's because this series is my flagship series. It's actually the one that I'm most proud of. It's the one that I enjoy doing the most. It tends to get on average lower hits than my other videos, but I don't care. I really enjoy doing these. But because I do these in advance, I haven't actually sat down to do a new God-Free Bible Study episode in several months. In fact, the last time that I recorded one, my channel had not yet been monetized. So that's happened. That's a major milestone. Now, when I say major milestone, keep in mind that monetized doesn't mean that I make a true income off of it. It just means that I make some money on the channel every month. But if you've ever looked into starting a YouTube channel, just getting monetized at any level, even if you're making $50 a month, is a major milestone. So that's happened. I've gone past 10,000 subscribers for whatever that's worth. I mean, you don't get any special bonus or award for that, but it's still a cool milestone to hit. I have members now, members who get to see content like this well before it's made available to the public, because these are published every Wednesday, but because I record them in advance, the members can see them first. So there's been a lot happening on the channel, and I've been very gratified to see the growth of the channel, to view and read all of your comments, to see all of the great feedback, even some of the snarky comments. So it's been a lot of fun. And I just want to put this here as kind of a milestone marker. Now, I know maybe that makes no sense because you may be watching this episode as the first God-Free Bible Study episode you've ever watched. And it's also possible that you will see this video 5 years from now when my channel has a lot more subscribers, or I look a lot different, or maybe my content in the channel is in some way different. But nevertheless, for me, I always like to put these little updates every once in a while because this feels like home to me, to put it in kind of a corny way, I guess. So let's go ahead and get back into the reading for the first time that I've been doing this in a little while. God-Free Bible Study, that is. And we are starting off at Numbers 15. Today's video is sponsored again by ginger ale and strawberry lemonade vodka. Yay, liquor. Now, as we do from time to time here on God-Free Bible Study, I always let you know anytime we're going to skip over something. And we're not going to skip over all of Numbers 15, but we are going to skip over the first 31 verses. Why am I skipping these verses? You're free to look them up on your own, but it is another seemingly endless list of details about offerings and the lamb and the ephah of flour and how you have to prepare everything and the oil. And oh my gosh, it is just so much self-indulgent crap from this ancient, petty warlord of a deity that we know as Yahweh. So I'm not going to read through these first 31 verses on screen. It's boring as hell, and it's just more of God or Yahweh filleting himself while he tells everyone about all the details for all of the offerings that we need to make to him, or at least that the Israelites have to make to him. So you can read it on your own. You can even go find yourself a female goat and offer it as a purification offering, or whatever else you want to do in this endless, ridiculous list of instructions. that's on you. So we're going to pick this up in Numbers 15, verse 32. And this gets right into the joy. This is the penalty for violating the Sabbath. It says, when the Israelites were in the wilderness, they found a man gathering sticks on the Sabbath day. Those who found him gathering sticks brought him to Moses, Aaron, and the whole congregation. They put him in custody because it was not clear what should be done to him. Then the Lord said to Moses, the man shall be put to death. All the congregation shall stone him outside the camp. The whole congregation brought him outside the camp and stoned him to death, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. Oh yeah, we're jumping right back into the joy here in Numbers. So, of course, you're gathering sticks on the Sabbath. So, obviously, we have to stone you and have the whole congregation stone you. Now, I've mentioned this in previous chapters and verses and books, but the mere idea of the entire congregation being expected to go out and participate in the stoning itself, that alone is disgusting. It's like saying, hey, it's not enough that we kill someone for this, but the blood needs to be on everybody's hands. Everybody has to participate. Now, it doesn't say specifically who exactly participates as part of the congregation, but if you read this very literally, you could even argue that maybe it was kids brought out there and told to participate in the stoning. Regardless, this is such a barbaric and ancient idea of execution. I mean, I'm not even getting into the question of whether or not capital punishment or capital crimes, whether that is a proper form of punishment. That's a whole debate for society, and we can talk about that another time. But even if we assume that, fine, you're going to be punished for certain things with death, then the idea that it has to be done by the entire congregation stoning the person and that we then memorialize it in our holy text is, of course, revolting. But there's one other part about this passage I want to point out, beside the obvious bullshit of us stoning someone to death because they were gathering sticks. This is something that I'm sure someone has brought it up, but I've never heard anyone address it yet in any of the other commentaries or Bible studies that I've seen online or not about this passage. So I want to put this little earworm on you here. That's probably the wrong term because I'm not going to sing it, but I want to put this little idea in your brain. It says, when the Israelites were in the wilderness, they found a man gathering sticks on the Sabbath day. Now, I think the default understanding of this is that the Israelites, being in the wilderness themselves, if they find a man gathering sticks, I think the assumption there is that they found one of their own people who had wandered off and started gathering sticks on the Sabbath day. But it doesn't actually say that. Now, I know that in the wilderness, you could argue that there weren't a lot of people there besides the Israelites. So maybe I am reaching here, but I am just reading to you word for word what the text says. It doesn't say they found an Israelite gathering sticks on the Sabbath day. It just says they found a man gathering sticks on the Sabbath day. And I bring this up because, as disgusting as it is to think that they would stone one of their own for committing the horrific crime of gathering sticks on the Sabbath, it's also a valid reading from this text to think that maybe they found someone who wasn't even an Israelite, who happened to be camping out, wandering through the desert, for whatever reason. and he was gathering sticks, and then they came upon him and then said, "Oh my gosh, we found some guy gathering sticks on the Sabbath. Let's stone him to death." I mean, this would be like you accidentally, unknowingly wandering through a group of Muslims, and they are, when you come upon them, they have their head down, bowed to Mecca on their rugs, their prayer rugs. And then when they see you stumble in there, not knowing what's going on, they go, "Oh my gosh, he's not bowing to Mecca." And they grab you and they put you on trial and they stone you to death for something that you may not have even known was happening. You are not even part of their culture. Who knows? Now, again, I know maybe that is too much of a stretch for some people, but the text does not say that they found one of their own gathering sticks on the Sabbath. It just says that they found a man. And while you can argue, well, who else is going to be out there in the wilderness? I mean, there were presumably occasionally other people out in the wilderness doing certain things. So I don't think that that is a crazy interpretation to take from this already disgusting and immoral verse. So continuing on with Numbers 15, starting now at verse 37, the Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and tell them to make fringes on the corners of their garments throughout their generations, and to put a blue cord on the fringe at each corner. You have the fringe so that when you see it, you will remember all the commandments of the Lord and do them and not follow the lust of your own heart and your own eyes. So you shall remember and do all my commandments, and you shall be holy to your God. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God." Yes, we know. I am the Lord your God. In case you weren't sure, because you know he's only mentioned it about 58 times at this point in the book. But in case you weren't sure, he is the Lord your God. But this whole thing about fringes, I understand that every religion is going to have their little quirks and their little remembrances and their little ways of dressing and such, but wear this fringe so that you'll remember the commandments. I mean, why isn't it just any other article of clothing? Wear this pocket watch. I mean, I know they didn't have watches, but wear this hat so that you remember the commandments. Wear these special socks so that you remember to follow the commandments. I mean, okay, fine. It just seems kind of silly. Moving on to number 16. This is the revolt of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. Now Korah, son of Izhar, son of Kohath, son of Levi, along with Dathan and Abiram, sons of Eliab, and On, son of Peleth, son of Reuben, took 250 Israelite men, leaders of the congregation, chosen from the assembly, well-known men, and they confronted Moses. They assembled against Moses and against Aaron and said to them, "You have gone too far. All the congregation are holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. So why then do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord?" When Moses heard it, he fell on his face. Then he spoke to Korah and all his congregation, saying, "In the morning the Lord will make known who is his and who is holy, and who will be allowed to approach him. The one whom he will choose, he will allow to approach him. Do this. Take censers, Korah and all your congregation, and tomorrow put fire in them and lay incense on them before the Lord. And the man whom the Lord chooses shall be the Holy One. You Levites have gone too far." Then Moses said to Korah, "Hear now, you Levites. Is it too little for you that the God of Israel has separated you from the congregation of Israel to allow you to approach him in order to perform the duties of the Lord's tabernacle and to stand before the congregation and serve them? He has allowed you to approach him and all your brother Levites with you, yet you seek the priesthood as well. Therefore, you and all your congregation have gathered together against the Lord. What is Aaron that you rail against him?" So this is listed as a quote unquote revolt. That's not technically from the text, but it's from the headers that they put above the text that were added after the fact. And of course, you hear from Moses' words that he's absolutely treating this like a revolt. I got to be honest with you. When I read this, I think that Moses is coming across as a power hungry little bitch. I mean, seriously, he sounds so butthurt that someone actually had the balls to question him on anything. Notice they are basically calling out Moses for being the one to create these commandments. They're spelling out the fact that this isn't God, it's Moses setting the rules. I mean, they're not saying that verbatim in the text, but remember going back to like Exodus and Mount Sinai, where I had said, you know, if you're looking at this in even a slightly logical way, it doesn't look like God's on that mountain. It looks like Moses is making this play saying, hey, I went up the mountain and I talked to God, and this is what God says, which sounds a whole lot like this is what Moses says. And for the most part, the Israelites go along with him, right? But it is interesting here to see that these other leaders of tribes, these Levites, are rising up and saying, dude, why is it that you're the only one who gets to talk to God? And Moses' response to it is like something straight out of the Real Housewives of Atlanta or Real Housewives of New Jersey or whatever. First of all, he fell on his face. I mean, drama queen much? Like, oh, he just falls on his face like, how dare anyone question me? And then he becomes a pissy little bitch because he's telling Korah immediately, oh yeah, you want to challenge me? Then go grab your censers, which after the death of Aaron's sons have a real sinister feel to them. And he's saying, basically, we're going to go out and we're going to have this holy test and we're going to see which one God will talk to. And if it's not you, then he'll only talk to me. I mean, why does it have to be this way? Why does it have to be that not only is Moses essentially the only mouthpiece to the entire embryonic nation of Israel through which God supposedly speaks, but no one else can even take any type of leadership role here? He even says, you Levites have gone too far. I do think it's kind of hilarious that none of the Levites, after he accuses them of going too far, are smart enough to keep Moses from setting the terms of this showdown. In other words, if we were to believe the text, you know, Moses is talking to God and Moses has basically been a conduit for all these miracles. I don't know if you can really say that Moses does the miracles himself, but he's definitely a conduit for these miracles. And then when they go to challenge Moses, he says, here's what we're going to do. Now, if I was in their shoes, I'd be like, no, you don't get to set the rules on this, okay? Because this is a guy who, and the best interpretation of it in the Christian and Jewish interpretation, is God's man and is a conduit for God's miracles. In the most practical interpretation of it, he is a sneaky mofo, and he is probably some kind of illusionist himself, and he knows how to manipulate people. And you're letting this man set the terms of this showdown. And I don't think that that's too smart. But hey, the Levites let him do it. And you could argue maybe the Levites had no choice. But if the Levites had no choice but to let him set the terms, then you could argue, well, then they shouldn't have even risen up against him anyway. But this gets really, to me, petty and disgusting because Moses says to Korah, is it too little for you that the God of Israel has separated you from the congregation of Israel to allow you to approach him in order to perform the duties of the Lord's tabernacle and to stand before the congregation and serve them? In other words, remember, the Levites didn't ask for this. The Levites were told that this is what you will be. You and your entire tribe now, you will essentially be the keepers of the tabernacle. This is what you are going to do. They're like kind of the faith militant a little bit. And they weren't asked if they wanted to do that. They were told this is your role. And now that this is their role, and some of them apparently don't like it, Moses then has the nerve to say to them, how dare you? Like, you're already allowed to serve us. That should make you happy enough as it is. You get to serve us the way we've told you to serve us. Now be happy about it and shut up. Moses sent for I never know how to pronounce that. Moses sent for Dathan and Abiram, sons of Eliab, but they said, we will not come. Is it too little that you have brought us up out of a land flowing with milk and honey to kill us in the wilderness, that you must also lord it over us? It is clear you have not brought us into a land flowing with milk and honey, or given us an inheritance of fields and vineyards. Would you put out the eyes of these men? We will not come. This, to me, is very telling, because Dathan and Abiram are calling out Moses for what this is. You've already led us into the desert, and there's no clear plan for how we're getting out of it. And then on top of that, when we have the nerve to actually question your leadership, you're going to set the terms of this, and it's probably going to end up in you somehow getting a bunch of our people killed, or having their eyes put out, or some horrible other punishment that presumably comes from God. It's very interesting to me that Dathan and Abiram really call him out on this bullshit. Moses was very angry and said to the Lord, pay no attention to their offering. I have not taken one donkey from them, and I have not harmed any one of them. And Moses said to Korah, as for you and all your congregation, be present tomorrow before the Lord, you and they and Aaron, and let each one of you take his censer and put incense on it, and each one of you present his censer before the Lord, 250 censers, you also and Aaron, each his censer. So each man took his censer, and they put fire in the censers and laid incense on them, and they stood at the entrance of the tent of meeting with Moses and Aaron. Then Korah assembled the whole congregation against them at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord appeared to the whole congregation. So notice at the beginning of this passage that Moses is now giving commands to God. Now, you guys might think that I'm going overboard with this whole analogy of saying, even in the most charitable interpretation, I don't know if you could argue that God's even there. It sounds to me like Moses is the one pretending like he's talking to God. Now, I know that the text does not say that, of course, but here at the beginning of this passage, this is Yahweh, who is incredibly, famously arrogant and touchy and petty about everything. But this starts off with Moses being angry and saying to the Lord, pay no attention to their offering. I don't think most people catch on that sentence, but this is Moses giving a commandment to God about which offerings he should pay attention to or not pay attention to. I think most people, if you took this out of the context and you didn't assume that this is the holy Moses talking, if I told you that I commanded God not to accept your offering or to pay any attention to your offering, most people would think that I sound like an arrogant ass at best. And at worst, they might think that I sound heretical to think that I can tell God whether or not to pay attention to an offering. Don't you think that it would normally be God saying whether or not he's going to pay attention to an offering, or even differently, that he just wouldn't say anything? He would just pay attention to the offerings that he wants to pay attention to, but not according to this text. How would you like to be one of my advisors? I'm using Skepticus's memberships as a way to allow you to have a voice in the content and the direction of this channel. I hope to see you in the membership pool, and I want to hear your voice in what Skepticus is doing going forward. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, separate yourselves from this congregation so that I may consume them in a moment. They fell on their faces and said, O God, the God of the spirits of all flesh, shall one person sin and you become angry with the whole congregation? There's just so much more here again that's so problematic. So now God is speaking to Moses and Aaron and saying, look, it's time for me to do more murder. It's murder time. And at this point, after Moses was the one who stirred up all this shit, and I say Moses, you could say, well, Korah stirred it up because he challenged Moses. But any good leader should be able to handle a challenge to his or her authority. Yes, listen to that, Orange Trump boy. Any good leader should be able to handle a challenge to his or her authority without going off the deep end and without setting up this ridiculous test. Korah, yes, and the other leaders challenged Moses, and they were apparently not happy with Moses and Aaron's leadership, but Moses was the one who said, go get your censers. Everyone come out to the tabernacle, to the area, and we're going to see who God favors. And now that he's set this up, God says, cool, I'm going to start the murder train. And now Moses has the audacity to say, oh God, the God of the spirits of all flesh, shall one person sin and you become angry with the whole congregation? At this point in the narrative, Moses should know the nature of God. He should know that this type of challenge is going to lead to mass death. I also want to point out here that Moses and Aaron fall on their faces. And they say, oh God, the God of the spirits of all flesh, shall one person sin and you become angry with the whole congregation? Sin. What sin? Once again, we are talking about sin, but what we're told is someone is just had the nerve to actually question authority. So much of this book is based on the idea that you better not ask any damn questions. Because here, not only is God saying, yeah, I'm going to consume them all in flames, because God is just jerking himself off of this, over this. He's got a big stiffy waiting to like rain fire down on everyone. And on top of that, even when they act like they're trying to show some mercy to the rest of the congregation, here Moses and Aaron say, shall one person sin and you become angry with the whole congregation? How in the hell is it a sin to question the human leadership? That is a disgusting sentiment, to think that Korah and the other leaders had the audacity to actually question Moses and Aaron or challenge them. And now this is being laid out as a sin. And the Lord is telling Moses, oh man, let's get the murder going. That's so disgusting. And the Lord spoke to Moses, speak to the congregation, saying, get away from the dwellings of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. So Moses got up and went to Dathan and Abiram. The elders of Israel followed him. He spoke to the congregation, saying, turn away from the tents of these wicked men and touch nothing of theirs, or you will be swept away for all their sins. Again, with the sins. So they got away from the dwellings of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. And Dathan and Abiram came out and stood at the entrances of their tents, together with their wives, their children, and their little ones. And Moses said, this is how you shall know that the Lord has sent me to do all these works. It has not been of my own accord. If these people die a natural death, or if a natural fate comes on them, then the Lord has not sent me. But if the Lord creates something new and the ground opens its mouth and swallows them up with all that belongs to them, and they go down alive into Sheol, then you shall know that these men have despised the Lord. This is disgusting. This is Korah Dathan and Abiram, the rebels, if you will, who had the audacity to actually question the leadership of Moses and Aaron. They're now standing out there. Remember, Dathan and Abiram said, we're not going to go because basically you're going to be an ass and you're going to start killing a bunch of people. And now, yes, this is exactly what's happening. Korah, Dathan, and Abiram are at the entrances of their tents together with their wives, their children, and their little ones. And now Moses, cold as hell, says, this is how you shall know that the Lord has sent me to do all these works. It has not been of my own accord. If these people die a natural death, or if a natural fate comes on them, then the Lord has not sent me. This is basically Moses laying down the gauntlet to God himself, saying, if you let these people die a natural death, or if natural fate comes upon them, then the Lord has not sent me. But if the Lord creates something new and the ground opens its mouth and swallows them up with all that belongs to them, and they go down alive into Sheol, then you shall know that these men have despised the Lord. I don't know how you make Moses sound any more disgusting here. And I don't know how you make God sound much more disgusting or servile, because that's what this is. This is God acting in a way that is servile to Moses. Because let's read on. As soon as he finished speaking all these words, the ground under them was split apart. The earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up, along with their households. Everyone who belonged to Korah, that's the slaves, and all their goods. So they, with all that belonged to them, went down alive into Sheol. The earth closed over them, and they perished from the midst of the assembly. All Israel around them fled at their outcry, for they said, the earth will swallow us too. And the fire came out from the Lord and consumed the 250 men offering the incense. Here's the synopsis. If you have the audacity to challenge church authority, you are a dead man. Now, I'm not saying that today, if you do so much as challenge anyone in the church, you will be swallowed up by God and killed. But that's what this passage in horrible detail is telling us. And just like everything else in the Bible, there is no sense of who is actually guilty of the crime, assuming there is even a crime. Because again, the idea that you challenge the authority and therefore you need to die and you've committed a sin is ridiculous in and of itself. But it's not enough that that happens. It's not enough that he takes Korah and Dathan and Abiram. No, he actually has to kill all the families, all the people, everyone who belonged to Korah, which I don't know how these slaves now have new slaves of their own. I'm not sure. But when it says everyone who belonged to Korah, that is a clear indication that Korah had slaves. Apparently, right after they got out of Egypt, they started selling each other into slavery, I guess. I don't know. But apparently Korah and his wife and his children and his little ones and the 250 men who were loyal to him, who lined up with their censors to do the test, and then all of Dathan and Abiram's people too, they were all just swallowed up with the earth. And then as if that wasn't enough, God had to throw fire on it too, just because murder. Yeah. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, tell Eleazar, son of Aaron, the priest, to take the censers out of the blaze, then scatter the fire far and wide. For the censers of these sinners, you know, the people who had the audacity to question authority, the censers of these sinners have become holy at the cost of their lives. Make them into hammered plates as a covering for the altar, for they presented them before the Lord, and they became holy. Thus they shall be assigned to the Israelites. So Eleazar, the priest, took the bronze censers that had been presented by those who were burned, and they were hammered out as a covering for the altar, a reminder to the Israelites that no outsider who is not of the descendants of Aaron shall approach to offer incense before the Lord, so as not to become like Korah and his congregation, just as the Lord had said to him through Moses. This is such a transparent act of current and ongoing intimidation. This is the screw around and find out memorial, because after he burns these people to death and then has them swallowed up, apparently the censers survived. So he tells Moses to go get the censers and hammer it out as a covering for the altar. Of course, the other people in the camp are going to know where that covering for the altar came from. They're going to know that this came from the censers that were provided by the people who had the audacity to question the authority of Moses. So I don't care what stupid narrative you want to tack onto the top of this to make it sound flowery and holy. This is an act of ongoing intimidation. Imagine if your family challenges me and I say, oh yeah, let's see. And then of course I kill all of them. But when they came to challenge me, they all brought guns and they were going to shoot me down. But somehow I found a way to kill all of them first. But that's not enough. I take all of their guns and I melt them down. And I put them into some covering of an altar that they have to come worship at every week afterwards. And every time they come to worship, they're going to see those melted down guns, and they're going to know that they came from their other family members who were killed when they had the audacity to revolt against me. That's exactly what's happening here. On the next day, however, the whole congregation of the Israelites rebelled against Moses and against Aaron, saying, "You have killed the people of the Lord." And when the congregation had assembled against them, Moses and Aaron turned toward the tent of meeting. The cloud had covered it, and the glory of the Lord appeared. Then Moses and Aaron came to the front of the tent of meeting, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Get away from this congregation, so that I may consume them in a moment." And they fell on their faces. Here we go again with the fall on their faces thing. At this point, I feel like it's just an act. They're just putting on an act to make themselves seem like they are trying to protect the congregation. Moses said to Aaron, "Take your censer, put fire on it from the altar and lay incense on it and carry it quickly to the congregation and make atonement for them. For wrath has gone out from the Lord. The plague has begun." Oh, goody. More plagues. Yes. The only thing that God does better than plaguing Egyptians is plaguing his own people over and over and over again. So Aaron took it as Moses had ordered and ran into the middle of the assembly where the plague had already begun among the people. This is an efficient plague, people. He put on the incense and made atonement for the people. He stood between the dead and the living, and the plague was stopped. Those who died by the plague were 14,700. Besides those who died in the affair of Korah. When the plague was stopped, Aaron returned to Moses at the entrance of the tent of meeting. So between the plague and between the people that had the audacity with Korah's first group to lay out their censers in this religious test, this is 14,950 people stricken dead by God because they didn't blindly follow Moses. Now, I want you to think of something really quick. Even in this passage, God on numerous occasions is speaking to Moses and to Aaron. So if this whole test was about who has the right to talk with God and who has the right to lead us and who is holy, why isn't it that God couldn't have just said to everyone, "Hey, I know you're pissed off right now with Moses, but he's my guy. Don't rise up against him. He's doing the best he can. He's my guy." If God can talk to Moses, then God could have talked to Korah. God could have talked to any of the other 14,950 people who revolted, but he would not do it. Instead, he was too happy putting everyone up in flames, sucking them down into Sheol, and then slathering plague all over the entire group. The last thing I'll say on this before we move on to 17 is that this whole picture of Aaron just frantically going out in the middle of the people, and he puts on the incense and he makes atonement for the people. The whole idea of atonement, first of all, is so archaic and silly, because it's like, oh, someone's done a bad thing, so we have to pay a price for it. I mean, on one hand, although it sounds petty, I get it. A bad thing was done, we have to pay a price for it. Like, if I get a parking ticket, in theory, anyone can pay that parking ticket. My wife, my friend, my mom, if they wanted to, they could go down and pay my parking ticket for me. I don't know why they would, but I mean, they could if they wanted to. So on a civil law kind of level, I understand atonement, because the government just says this bad thing happened. We are owed a fine. And once they know that this fine has been levied, they literally don't care who pays the fine, just as long as it's paid. That makes sense for civil matters. For spiritual matters, this makes no sense. If I have done wrong, and I don't think that actually questioning authority should be considered wrong, and it's definitely shouldn't be considered worthy of the death penalty. But even if we accept that for a second, we say, fine, I've done wrong. Atonement needs to happen. Well, that can happen by Aaron running around in the square with his censer, putting incense and smoke all over everything. I mean, how does that atone for the supposed effery that I did? That makes no sense. Okay, number 17. This is a pretty short chapter, actually. This is the budding of Aaron's rod. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the Israelites and get 12 staffs from them, one for each ancestral house, from all the leaders of their ancestral houses." They're going to get the staffs from all of that timber that's in the wilderness. "Write each man's name on his staff, and write Aaron's name on the staff of Levi, for there shall be one staff for the head of each ancestral house. Place them in the tent of meeting before the covenant, where I meet with you. And the staff of the man whom I choose shall sprout. Thus I will put a stop to the complaints of the Israelites that they continually make against you." Or you could just talk to the Israelites. You could come to them in any kind of vision, real or imagined or whatever, and say, guess what? Moses and Aaron, they're my guys. Wouldn't that make a lot more sense than doing this stupid little test where we get staffs and see which one sprouts? No, I guess it doesn't. Moses spoke to the Israelites, and all their leaders gave him staffs, one for each leader, according to their ancestral houses, 12 staffs, and the staff of Aaron was among theirs. So Moses placed the staffs before the Lord in the tent of the covenant. When Moses went into the tent of the covenant on the next day, the staff of Aaron for the house of Levi had sprouted. It put forth buds. Bud. It had some bud on it. It put forth buds, produced blossoms, and bore ripe almonds. Oh, so apparently it's an almond staff. Then Moses brought out all the staffs from before the Lord to all the Israelites, and they looked, and each man took his staff. And the Lord said to Moses, "Put back the staff of Aaron before the covenant to be kept as a warning to rebels, so that you may make an end of their complaints against me, or else they will die." Moses did so, just as the Lord commanded him, so he did. So maybe there wouldn't be so many damn rebellions if you just got your people out of the wilderness. You dragged them into the wilderness where, granted, they were under the yoke of the Pharaoh, but now you've got them constantly worried about food and water and where they're going to live. Maybe if you got them out of the wilderness, you wouldn't keep having these problems. Or here's another idea. Maybe you could have done the stupid test with the budding of the staff before this even happened. I mean, an omniscient God would have known that these challenges were going to come from Korah and the others. And he could have nipped it in the bud. Yes, pun intended. He could have nipped it in the bud and said, hey, have them all bring their staffs in, and I will show you who's my chosen person by making one of them bud. But I feel like God didn't want to do that because God really felt like killing another 15,000 people. I just think he wanted to get his murder on. The Israelites said to Moses, we are perishing. We are lost. All of us are lost. Everyone who approaches the tabernacle of the Lord will die. Are we all to perish? I love the way this chapter ends with this statement from the Israelites to Moses. Even after Moses shows them the budding staff, they're basically saying, yeah, that's great, but we're dying and we're lost. And if we go to the tabernacle, the Lord will kill us all. I mean, is this just it? We're just supposed to die either from starvation or thirst or from the endless rebukes from God himself, the plagues and the fire and the earth opening up. I mean, what is the point of all this crap? When I was growing up, we didn't really spend any time looking at Leviticus, but Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, they're all kind of the same story, right? I mean, we're in Numbers now. I should have said Leviticus, but they're all kind of the same story. The story of wandering through the desert. I mean, they all have different details and they're told from slightly different perspectives, but it's all the same story. This was all told as some wonderful escape from the clutches of the Pharaoh. And yes, they were in the desert for 40 years. For some reason, I never understood when I was a kid. But at least they were going to the promised land. And it was just painted as something much more positive. And, after reading Exodus and Leviticus, and now being a good way through Numbers, it's just depressing and disgusting. And it's like he brought the entire massive group, because we're supposed to believe it's 600,000 men, which means if we put all the women and children and elderly along with them too, this has got to be close to 2 million people. 1 million plus people wandering through the desert, and God is just finding any excuse that he can to strike them down for any sign of rebellion or unhappiness or questioning authority at any turn. Yay, Yahweh. Thank you again for being with me here on God-Free Bible Study. We're going to wrap this up because if I get into Numbers 18, it's going to start to run pretty long. I appreciate you being here. If I have said anything that has misrepresented the Holy Text or God or Vishnu or anyone else, Satan, I mean, anyone who wants to chime in and correct me, they are welcome to do so at any time. Yeah, they never do. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for my members, many of you who will be seeing this episode early. I appreciate the patronage of everyone who watches these videos. I hope to see you on many more videos in the future. Please leave your comments below, whether they're supportive or snarky or whatever. I would love to see them all. I hope to see you on future videos, but until I do, lo, I say unto you, stay skeptical.